So we are going to focus on some of the birds of prey that we have around here. Now this is a great horned owl. It is one of the larger owl species and definitely one of the largest in Ohio. And the great horned owl that you're seeing now is actually a taxidermied one, but these owls are one of the only predators of skunks. They're big enough to actually capture a skunk, and they don't have a good sense of smell at all. So the skunk's main defense of spraying on them is not going to work out. So you look at this owl and you'll see its eyes are really, really huge. Owls all have very large eyes that help them hunt, and they take up so much space in their skull that they almost touch. So if there was ever a great horned owl that was actually as big as I am tall, this is how big my eyes would be. Whoo! So these are some wings from a great horned owl, and unfortunately sometimes animals do die of old age and things like that. And the reason we keep these things is because you normally are not going to get up close enough to a great horned owl to actually see what it's like. So these are great learning tools. It is sad to see the animal die, but this is still a very neat thing to see up close. One thing that's kind of cool with many birds, their bones are hollow in the middle, like a drinking straw. And that makes it easier for them to fly. If they had dense bones like we do, they wouldn't be able to get off the ground. And it's kind of cool too. You look at these wings, they are, quite huge. The great horned owl, as I said, is one of our larger owl species. And the coloration on those wings looks just like tree bark. So that would help them to hide in the trees. These are talons, which were obtained from the same owl that we had the wings from, and this shows you just how sharp those are. I mean, just barely putting it against my finger, I can feel that would hurt if the owl actually gripped with those. And this is what they use to capture their food. Now it is interesting, it almost looks like fur covering these toes, but actually those are feathers as well. So they have very downy feathers where their feet are. Here are a couple of other wings that we have. This one is from a barred owl, and this one is from a Cooper's hawk. And it's really interesting. Owls fly nearly silently, and that is a good thing for them because it helps them to sneak up on their prey without them knowing that the owl is coming. And also, they rely very much on their hearing when they're hunting, not just their eyesight. And if they were noisy when they were flapping their wings, it would make it a little harder for them to pinpoint the sound of their prey. So kind of a neat thing, if you look at the trailing edge on this owl wing, you'll see these fringy parts sticking up here. And that actually helps reduce the wind turbulence sounds as the owl flaps. Plus, these feathers are very thick and velvety, and that also helps trap sound. So the hawk wing does not have those features, and I'm going to flap both wings and let you see if you can hear the difference. Here's the hawk wing first, compared to the owl wing. It's quite a difference. This is a barred owl skull. It's actually a replica of one, and you can see the eye sockets are really huge. They do take up a large portion of the skull cavity. And like all birds, their eyes are fixed in place. So when they want to look around, they can't do the shifty eyes like we can. They can't make their eyes move side to side. If they want to look at something, they have to turn their entire head to see what they need to look at. And there is a myth that owls can turn their entire head around, and that is not true. If they actually turn their head all the way around, they'd break their neck. It wouldn't work that way. So they do have the ability to turn it quite a bit around, but not completely around. So another thing you'll notice is these eyes are facing forward. That's what we call binocular vision. I always remember it because if you had binoculars, it works really well if your eyes are in the front like mine and like an owl's. The thing is, that helps them with depth perception. And that's very important if you're an animal that's going to pounce down or swoop down on your prey. Now, the other animals have eyes on the side of their head, which is called monocular vision. And those are typically the prey animals, and they have a wider field of vision. They can see almost everything except the back of their head, and that's important because they need to be on the lookout for predators that are after them. And the binocular vision is going to help the predator zero in on that prey. There are various sizes and shapes of owls in Ohio, and these are silhouettes that have been made to fit the dimensions of each owl. We don't get these all the time, especially in the southern part of the state, but from left to right, the white silhouette is a snowy owl compared to the size of a great horned owl. And moving on down the line, we have the one next to the great horned owl is a short-eared owl. And then the barred owl, which you may notice does not have tufts on its head. And then we have the long-eared owl, which has quite prominent tufts, and a screech owl. And the small one off to the side is our smallest in this state, and that's the saw-whet owl. So this is an owl pellet. And birds of prey like owls, and it's not just owls, hawks do this too, so do other birds that eat this kind of thing. They cannot digest the fur, feathers, and bones of their meal. So they actually will kind of cough up these little pellets. And it's interesting because you can really find out a lot about their diet by dissecting one of these. Now I'm going to keep this one intact, but we have several in the past that we have opened up. And this is just kind of a whole bag full of different ones. But what you'll see when you open up a pellet, you can find entire skulls of rodents that they ate. Here's a feather, here's a leg bone. So there's a lot that you can discover, and there's just so many neat things in there. And I know that might be a little gross for some people, but it is fascinating, and you can learn a lot about their diet. Birds of prey are very important predators and very effective predators, so they're good to have around. They definitely reduce our rodent population. And it's also kind of cool because you can usually tell if there's a nest nearby by the presence of pellets on the ground. And another thing to look for is something called whitewash, where they are perching for the night or possibly where there's a nest. The trees will look like they have white paint on them. I don't need to tell you what that really is. I bet you can figure it out. I like gross stuff, so you can probably guess what the whitewash really is. So this is our red-tailed hawk, and we have decided to call her Juliet because in years past we have had a male wild red-tailed hawk who has joined her generally right around the Valentine's Day time of the year, and unfortunately she cannot get out and join him in the wild because she has an injured shoulder and she is unable to hunt on her own. So she stays here permanently, and he would have made a wonderful suitor. He was a very good hunter. On many occasions I saw him taking down prey such as squirrels and snakes and things like that. And at one point he was even building a nest for her. And I can remember hearing her anytime I knew he was nearby because I would hear her just screech. And it just breaks your heart. It's the, just like Romeo and Juliet for real. It was a doomed love story. Now, we assume that he has given up. We haven't seen him this year, but, we still keep her here where she can be safe. And red-tailed hawks are one of the more prominent raptors in this area. You'll often see them along telephone poles and fields and things like that. Being raptors, they do have very sharp talons. So if I were to handle this bird, I would definitely have it on glove. But we haven't actually had the opportunity to get this bird trained to the glove, and we've had her for a number of years, so she just kind of stays on display. Now I will try and get a picture of the tail feathers. They are called red-tailed hawks for a reason, so I'm going to see if I can sneak around here and maybe you can see that red color a little bit on the feathers if she'll let me. I know she's a little bit nervous with me being in here, There, you can kind of see that color. This is a barred owl, and you can see the coloration kind of has stripes. So it's B-A-R-R-E-D, but just for a play on words, we named it Shakespeare, like the bard, B-A-R-D. Now, barred owls are a little unusual compared to other owls. They don't have those feathers sticking up at the top of their head that look like ears, the ear tufts, which aren't really ears. And they have black eyes rather than having color in the eyes. Sometimes other owls are going to have yellow eyes or something like that. And they have an interesting call. They sort of sound like, if you put words to it, they're saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" They will often make that sound in response to you if you're anywhere near close to sounding like one. If you can kind of go, "Ooh, ooh, 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 ooh," they may actually answer. So barred owls are really pretty cool. They are larger than the screech owls, but smaller than a great horned owl. But they will eat a lot of things, rodents and mice and rats, that type of thing. So they are very beneficial to have around. This is a turkey vulture, and we've named it Stinky for a reason. Stinky is a rather stinky animal. Turkey vultures eat dead animals for lunch. That is what they do, which it's gross, but it's nice that we have a cleanup crew, and because of that he does kind of stink. Now, he has an injured shoulder and is not able to soar, but when you look up in the sky, sometimes you'll see these large black birds, and they rarely flap their wings. They just kind of hang glide as they coast, and they actually find their food by sense of smell. Their nostrils are quite huge and very good at detecting the smell of carrion, which is the dead meat that they eat. So when they're soaring around, they are sometimes looking or smelling for food. Now, when they find something to eat, they all kind of get together. They are generally found in groups, and they will, eat the dead meal, which is gross, but it is what they do. Now, that's part of why they don't have feathers on their head much. They're sticking their heads down in those carcasses, and that would be a place where bacteria could hang out if they had a lot of feathers there. So they do have that bald head. This is why they're called turkey vultures, because they kind of look like a turkey. And you may hear him every now and then. He's been hissing. They do not have vocal cords, so the only sound he can make is a hiss. Now, these birds do have very long wings. Their wingspan is every bit of 5-6 feet, so they really don't have to flap their wings much when they are hunting. So Stinky does have another kind of a gross thing about him. They will often, if they feel distressed or to scare off a predator or just to lighten the load, they will vomit. And I did not catch that on film, but just as I came into his cage, he did that. Again, I do have a lot of gross facts. Excuse me if that doesn't sit well with you, but he will eat that again, so it doesn't go to waste. So this is our turkey vulture. So this is a screech owl, an eastern screech owl. And the screech owl is one of our smaller sized owls, not the smallest. There actually is a smaller one than this. The saw-whet owl is about the size of a pop can. But this is not a baby. This is as big as they get. Now, this happens to be a red phase screech owl. Sometimes you will see them in a brown color, but more often than not, they are gray, which matches the bark. And there's not really any reason that I know of why they have the different color phases. It's just kind of the way they are. Now, you may notice that our screech owl only has one eye. A lot of our animals here at the Nature Center do have some problems that would make it hard for them to live in the wild. And this bird would not be able to hunt on its own with only one eye. The other eye, there was a bacterial infection, and that's why he's missing that one eye. And I will tell you a little bit more about screech owls. These little guys will eat just about anything that is small. Like, they do eat a lot of rodents, but they'll also eat frogs and worms and insects and things like that. They don't sound like a screech. their noises are, I don't know who named it screech owl, but they make different noises. One that you might hear at night kind of sounds like a little pony, kind of a whistle, sort of a type of a sound. If it were up to me, I would have named it the My Little Pony owl. They don't really screech. Sometimes they will make a noise sort of like whoo, and other times they will kind of do a brr, 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 and they will click their beaks together, their beak, and they will make a sound that's kind of a, and when they do that, that's a warning. They're usually angry. It's kind of like the version of, you know, how a dog growls. Well, the bird is clacking its beak as a warning. Leave me alone. I'm not happy right now. Now, screech owls are going to be active at night. So I've kind of woke this guy up. He is nocturnal. Normally he would be sleeping right now. And another interesting thing about owls, these little tufts, these are not their ears. They are just feathers. The real ears are actually along the side of the owl's head, and they're actually lopsided. They have one ear up high and one ear down low, and that helps them triangulate the sound when they're hearing something at night. They have actually really wonderful sense of hearing. These little tufts, primarily, they are for communication. Like if these tufts are flat down on his head, I know he's in a bad mood. But they do not serve any function for hearing. But their hearing is very, very good. I saw a video once where there were owls in a pitch black room and they released mice. There was no light at all, and they would almost always nail it. They would find that mouse. And speaking of that, they do have very sharp talons. Those are their claws there, and that's what they catch their food with. They are raptors. That means they catch their food with their feet. And for this reason, even though this is he is very cute, and you've probably seen Harry Potter movies and think, oh, this would be a wonderful pet. No, not at all. First of all, you would need to have a permit to even have an owl like this, and we do have the proper certifications to do that. But also, if you have an animal that you have to wear gloves to handle, that's not a good pet. That's a sign right there that this is an animal that is wild and it can harm you. And if I weren't wearing gloves right now, I would need Band-Aids. He also has a very sharp bill, and his beak is used to tear, flesh, and they can do that. Plus, you're going to have to provide it with a lot of food, mice or other animals, because that's what they eat. So they would not make a good pet, and it would be illegal for you to have one unless you work at a nature center and you have the proper certification. Now, I will tell you that this bird does not have a name yet. And we want to give the public an opportunity to come up with a name. So we will ask that you get on our Facebook page, Greene County Parks and Trails, and leave some ideas in the comments. And then we will take a look at those suggestions and come up with something. And, we'll let you know at some point. We will kind of maybe narrow it down to the top 3, and we'll have a vote so we can come up with a really cool name for our little screech owl. Who had fun learning about owls and other birds of prey? I hope that you get a chance to see some of them. Maybe when you're out on a hike, you might look up, possibly see a hawk. Maybe at night you could take a hike and see one of our owls out and about. It's very cool to look for these feathered friends. Of the skull cavity. And let's start that over. Yes, we're starting. These thicker feathers trap that sound. Turkey vulture. Winged birds of prey. So it's looking right at me, but if it were able to extend its arms or its wings, so yeah, the red-tailed duck. Oh, and that's something that red-tailed ducks do quite a bit. You may have seen that it just went to the bathroom.